Hello, Abigail here. Hello, Abigail here with the astrology for this week. And in a word, this week is Martian. This week is all about the planet Mars. Every single major aspect involves Mars. The only thing that is not really Martian related is our very beautiful, lovely full moon in Aquarius, which is actually pretty separated from what's going on in the cosmos currently by degree. So there's not a whole lot of interconnection from other planets, which kind of creates a really lovely blank slate to kind of release and cleanse. Aspects can be really great for getting stuff done, but when we need to move through and forward and we need to be able to let things go, aspects can make that harder. So this full moon doesn't have any. Also, important to note regarding Mars, Mars is in Libra where it is in detriment because it's in the opposite sign of its rulership. So Mars in Aries is word, sorry guys, Mercury retrograde. Mars in Aries is domicile. And the opposite of that is Libra, which is ruled by Venus, and Mars is not super thrilled to be in, a Venus ruled sign. It is also in detriment in Taurus. Things move slower. Instead of being the activator and instigator in Libra, Mars is the arbiter. And while being an arbiter isn't a bad thing, Mars doesn't want to have to sift through the facts and the, information and have to make a just decision. Mars just wants to act on impulse and the moment, which is a very Aries thing to do. And so this week, Mars is constantly having to negotiate as it hits aspects with every single one of the outer planets, including the modern ones. So it'll have an aspect with Uranus, Pluto, Neptune, not all of them. I scratch that. It isn't quite going into its moment with Jupiter, but Saturn. So all of the modern planets and Saturn have a moment. Also, this week contains the meeting of the malefics, which is always testy. So just know that this week is a bit bombastic. Not as bombastic, not as kind of fire starting as Mars in a sign where it's happier, but definitely the tension is going to be really heightened if you're doing anything in the legal field. Be really careful and definitely look at the astrology of these days so you know what you're doing. Also, Mercury is retrograde. So this kind of adds a layer to communication and having to understand and making the right choices. And because Mars is involved, we're going to have to make them pretty quickly, but we also have to make them in a moral and legal sense. There's a lot of parsing through terms. There's going to be a lot of people kind of picking at language this week. So my encouragement to you is to be really direct and to look for fallacies in people's, like if someone's arguing with you online, or which I would just suggest not doing too much of that this week unless you really need to. I pick and choose my battles. Arguing online or having an argument, look for bad faith arguments, look for red herrings, look for the thing that people do when like you say something and then they fill in the blanks and say all of these other things that you said that you didn't say. Something I do is I pick one of the things they say and go, I didn't say that. And if you can't critically understand that if I didn't say one thing, then if you read what I said and I didn't say the rest, then that also goes in that. But also do not engage in bad faith arguments this week. There really isn't a reason to. The only reason I engage in bad faith arguments on the internet is if I am in a thread about disability or Palestine and someone is spewing misinformation. I will tackle that so that people who come after us read that thread and get the information that I'm giving in the context of this argument. It's not to change the mind of the person that I'm having a conflict with, because most of those people, unfortunately, aren't really interested in the truth. But it is for other people who may not know this information or who are looking for argument points or talking points or need the courage to stand up for what they believe in. Or if they are a disabled person or a Palestinian, they can come back, or any other topics that I tend to fight on the internet over, they can come through, and I am actively trying to support and defend them in their comments. And if it's a stupid video, I scroll. And it's usually not about the stuff I care about. So just know, we're going to go through the aspects, but just know that this week is punchy, but in a kind of deceptive way because of the way Mars is having to negotiate based on the energy of Libra. So kicking things off, it really all starts on Wednesday, which means the bottom half of this week is action packed. Starts on Wednesday with Mars entering Libra. It is now out of Virgo and is now in Libra, where it is detriment, like I said earlier. Mars has a pretty, decently long transit, so we'll be there for the hot minute. But yeah, we are going to have to traverse the detriment steps. It's not always bad. Mars in Libra can be someone who really knows how to activate things in a very litigious way. They know how to get things done by the rules. However, they can be frustrating in a moment where you just need to do something. But every single placement of Mars has its strengths. This one just, they aren't the normal strengths. So we have that. Then on Friday, we go straight into stuff. Mars goes into its opposition with Saturn. These are always testy and hard. There's this push and pull between boundaries and the status quo and the things that are working and not working. And Mars being like, nope, not working. Nope. We need to do something different. And in Libra, it has to find a method to do it rather than just smacking it. So there's going to be this need to activate while also doing things within the context of the situation that you're in. You're not just going to be able to like pop off. This has to be kind of regulated and thought out, which, like I said, Mars is not a fan of. So we have that Saturn Mars opposition. Those are always spicy. If you can take away time or log off for a bit, not in order to detach from the news and the things that are happening in this world, but more of like maybe stay out of comment sections. I would do that because things in your own personal life are going to be a little spicy too. Depends on your chart. Some of you might have a detriment Mars, and so this is old news. You might just have a chaos chart, is what I call them, and which means when things are more difficult for other people, you tend to be fine. But for the rest of us, it's not Wednesday. Friday is a really testy day. Also, Mars goes into a trine with Uranus. So while Mars does have to kind of play by the rules a little bit more in Libra, that infusion from Uranus is going to really, really kick in and give us some tools and some ways to move that maybe we haven't moved before. There are some solutions within the system that are available to us. And yes, we still need to crush it and bring it down, which is very much a Mars-Saturn opposition. But Uranus is going to bring in a fresh way to do it. We don't need to recreate old patterns to kind of start the clock over on all of the things in society that are bad, on colonialism, on stuff. We don't need to like return them to an earlier phase when they were slightly less harmful for white people. We need to crush everything and uproot it, give land back, give reparations, all of these things. And this type of moment is that moment where we start to get some collective movement. So don't argue in comments, activate and encourage comrades is my slogan for this week. And also understand that you're never going to agree with everyone on everything. It's about agreeing on what you can agree on, which is a very Mars and Libra thing. It's like pick your 5, major topics, agree on those, and then compromise on the things that aren't human rights violations. So yeah, Friday is especially spicy and very testy. Me just realizing it's a really important anniversary of something in my life. So yeah, I will need to take extra care of myself. Anyways, so just know that this is a very kind of earth-shaking energy, both internally and externally. This is also a time to do little things differently. Like if you don't feel that you can change the world, which no one single person can, put your back into a wall that everyone else is pushing on. Pick the things that you can engage in. Go through and understand the consequences of your choices, not to push you away from participating, but so that you know how to behave and you have a plan for what's to come. That's kind of a very Mars and Libra thing, having a plan. Then we have the full moon on Saturday. This is kind of disjunct from a lot of the astrology, which I think is going to give us a clear view of some stuff. Inconjuncts and disconnection in a chart can be a problem, but I find, especially when things are very tenuous, such as this week, it's a great place of release and freedom. So dig in. Do know that the ruler of this moment is still in opposition to Mars. So while there is this kind of freedom within the moment, and while I say freedom, I'm not saying it's going to be easy or simple. I think it's going to be a lot of purging and cleansing and releasing, which can be difficult for some of us, especially if you like to hold on to stuff. Um, it is a moment where I do think there is a lot of energy to be gained, even while the ruler Saturn is conjunct Neptune and opposing Mars. But there is going to be some freedom for your thoughts, and you're going to be able to see boundaries and restrictions in a new light during this moment. So I'll make a longer video about the Aquarius full moon, but it is kind of a moment to breathe. However, that same day, Mars goes into its opposition with Neptune. So we are having to face reality, and we're having to face the way things are, and also the injustices of the way things are and how we've been lied to. Because while Neptune is not technically lies, it is what we don't see. It's stuff that's been obscured by something. um, Neptune, if you look at it, has a lot to do with propaganda and the words and actions that people use to cover and to assuage people to their side. So if you are looking for clarity, you will get it in this moment. People who are not are going to have tons of cognitive dissonance. So just know that people are going to be extra spicy this weekend, especially when it comes to the things they've been avoiding. And also know that this entire time, Mars has been creeping closer to Pluto. And Pluto has a really wide orb because of how slow it moves. So this whole time, Mars and the planet of crumbling empires and deception and the dark things that we don't want to deal with, slowly creeping towards that trine. And we have not an exact, because that would be really tricky to have, but we have a pretty tight grand trine between Uranus, Pluto, and Mars on Sunday. And this is change and innovation coming up against the establishment and the way things have been forced to be for a period of time. And Mars is about coming in and, like justice, weighing things in the scale and finding them wanting. We already know this, but I think we're going to see a lot of politicians bite the dust. I think we're going to see a lot of shady stuff when it comes to the legal field. I think we're going to see a huge overreach, even more than we've seen, an overreach of power from certain high places across the globe, not just in the US. A lot of governments are going to try to overreach this week or try to kick something off that ends in an overreach over the next few months. However, they're doing it during a Mercury retrograde. So when we come back through those degrees, we will have to face it again, and they're not going to be able to slip it through as easily as they thought. Doesn't make it any less distressing. So just know that this week we're going to be facing lies and deception. We're going to be facing kind of the unveiling of plans and strategies and schemes that people thought were well hidden. We're going to be coming up against the two malefics, Saturn and Mars, and what happens when they come together. And we have to, the malefics get things done, and it's hard. And Saturn is about boundaries and things that aren't functioning and highlighting the way things ought to be and what our limitations are. And Mars is about action and violence and aggression, even when it's tempered by Libra. And so I think we're going to see some police violence, which we see all the time, but I think we're going to have a heightened situation. I think the hope in this moment is Pluto in Aquarius and Uranus in Gemini. This kind of populist activation. Stand close with your communities. Stand up for your comrades. Do not pick fights within your community unless someone is a danger. Do not argue a point just because you have a different point, not an opposing one. This is the time for us as the underdogs, as a collective, to come together while friction and chaos is happening, which, as we know from the past, people in power take advantage of chaos and friction a lot. Also, just a heads up, this type of astrology is a lot, is very connected to natural disasters. And I want to be clear, I'm not fear mongering. This is just how it works. And we have these aspects often. Saturn opposing Mars happens every 18 months. It's not like these are unusual. The unusual thing is how many planets are in a new sign, and that all of this is happening at the beginning of a sign. Um, but this isn't a time to fear. This is a time to hold people close. This is a time to stand up for the rights of yourself and others. This is a time to raise your voice and activate it. Mercury retrogrades can give courage because we are given leash and a leash to speak up in a way that is unusual and unexpected. Um, and you can always rip that leash off anytime you feel like. But if you struggle to speak up, Mercury retrogrades are some of the best times to flex your vocal abilities, to speak your mind, and then to integrate that retrograde energy into the rest of your life, that subversion, that resistance to the norm. I will get off my soapbox. But just know that this week is a revolutionary week. A full moon in Aquarius is a revolutionary full moon. So have courage, be brave, know that big things are going to be happening this week. Um, but also know that you have community and care. And even if they're not right next to you or in the community you're in, there are people around the world who believe the same things you do, and that has power on an energetic plane as well as on a physical plane. So have faith, my dears, and buckle up for this week because it is a lot. And we're going to be facing some difficult recognitions about our own bloodlines and about the histories of our families. This all feels, especially with Uranus involved, this all feels as though ancestral chickens are coming to roost. So be open to the messages from ancestors. Be open to having conflict with them because not all of them have learned from their mistakes. Ancestors and people on the other side are only as good as the person who passed away. And yes, they will learn new things, but they still are on a learning journey. So just know that not all ancestors will agree with you all the time, and a week like this causes family issues, both with living family and with family who've passed. I still need to get some of my capitalist besties on my side in the family realm. I think they're pretty close. But this is a week to engage in spiritual battle. I'm not using spiritual warfare because I'm traumatized as a Christian raised child. Not anymore. But this is spiritual battle and spiritual aggression this week. It's also physical. So engage in both. Be both present in the spiritual and physical realm, and rest when you need to in both the spiritual and physical realm. There are other people fighting. You can do this in cycles. Anyways, I hope this wasn't too tangenty. Just know that this is a bombastic week astrologically. And I will see you all in a different space and time. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy this. And if you have any questions, pop them in the comment section.